Welcome to the Eerie Hour. Some places don't just haunt you, they wait. This old house, nestled on the edge of the sluggish, weed-choked river, is one of them. It sags into the damp earth, its bones groaning under the weight of stillness and neglect. There's a smell here, stagnant water, dust, and something else. Something that catches at the back of your throat like forgotten breath. You came seeking solitude, perhaps a quiet escape, but the air is thick with more than just humidity. It holds a low, insistent hum that seems to vibrate not in the air, but deep within the stone foundation, within your own chest. This place doesn't welcome. It accepts, coldly, like a tomb opening just enough to let you slip inside. Its history is whispered in the way the riverbank erodes, in the strange angles of the structure, in the stories locals refuse to tell completely. You are alone here, utterly and completely alone, save for the sounds the house makes, sounds that are beginning to change, to acquire a peculiar weight. The light dies early, this far down by the water, plunging the rooms into premature twilight, and the shadows feel less like absence and more like presence. If you enjoy descending into the strange and the forgotten, don't forget to like and subscribe, and share your theories below. Now, let's begin. But remember, once the story starts, something always follows. You sit in the worn armchair by the single-pane window, watching the gray light bleed from the sky. The house is silent, save for the soft, irregular tick of its old timbers settling, and a distant, rhythmic drip. It comes from somewhere within the walls, perhaps a pipe overhead, or a leak in the roof trickling down through hidden channels. It's a common sound in an old place like this, a part of its decaying pulse. Drip, drip. You try to ignore it, focusing instead on the still surface of the river, which reflects the bruised sky like a fractured mirror. The reflection is unsettlingly clear, yet distorted, showing shapes that aren't quite there on the bank. You tell yourself it's just the failing light, the imperfections in the ancient glass, the way water warps reality. But the reflection lingers, a hint of something elongated, pale, just out of sight. Drip, drip. The sound persists, a tiny hammer striking against the pervasive silence. You shift in the chair, feeling the damp chill seep from the stones through the floorboards. The air smells of wet earth and old metal. Later, in the oppressive dark, the sound changes. The drip is still there, a baseline rhythm, but another sound joins it, low and grating. It's a soft scrape. It seems to come from the same general direction, deep within the wall near the main bathroom pipe. Drip, scrape. Drip, scrape. It's not the rhythmic, predictable sound of something being dragged. It's hesitant, uneven, like a cautious claw. Your initial unease tightens into a prickle of anxiety. You get up, moving through the house by the dim glow of your phone screen. The floorboards protest underfoot. You stand outside the bathroom door, listening. The sounds are clearer here. Drip, scrape. The scraping is soft, almost a whisper against stone or plaster, but it holds an edge that the simple drip never did. It feels intentional. You lean closer to the wall, pressing your ear against the cool, rough plaster. The sound is definitely inside. A mild curiosity begins to morph into a creeping obsession. What could be scraping inside the wall? A rodent? The house settling further? The rhythmic scraping feels too deliberate for either. You tap the wall gently. The sounds stop instantly. Silence rushes in, thick and heavy. You wait, breath held tight in your chest. For a long moment, only the distant drip remains. Then, faintly, the scraping resumes, not from the wall where you tapped, but further along, deeper inside. It feels like it's moving away from you, or perhaps moving towards something else within the house's hidden spaces. The scraping sound has become a constant companion, shifting its location subtly, but always present, buried within the walls like a parasitic worm. You find yourself listening for it, tracing its path in your mind's eye as you move through the house. It's louder near the old fireplace, then softer by the stairs, then seems to sink lower, towards the foundation. It's relentless, a low, persistent scrape, like something dragging itself over coarse stone. It's no longer possible to dismiss it as mere house sounds. This is something else, something living perhaps, or at least moving with a semblance of purpose. You spend hours standing pressed against the cool plaster, trying to pinpoint its source, feeling the vibrations through the bone in your ear. Sometimes, pressed close like this, you hear another sound interwoven with the scraping, a faint, wet hiss. It's barely audible, lost under the scrape and the constant drip, but it's there, a breath drawn in where no breath should be. You start seeing the mirrors everywhere. Not just the ones on the walls, which are old and spotted with age like clouded eyes, but reflections in polished surfaces, the dark, still water in the cast-iron sink, the dust-filmed glass of the picture frames, even the glossy surface of the dark wooden table. And in these reflections, you catch glimpses, not of yourself, not always. Sometimes it's just a blur, a quick movement in your periphery that vanishes when you turn your head. Other times, it's something tall and thin, a distorted shadow that doesn't match your own. The reflection in the sink water, particularly, draws your gaze. The water is gray and still, a perfect dark mirror, and looking into it feels like looking down a long, dark well. Once, staring into it while the scraping echoed faintly nearby, you saw your own face reflected, but the eyes weren't yours. They were too wide, too dark, and they stared back at you with a chillingly vacant expression that fractured your composure. You splashed the water, breaking the image, your heart hammering against your ribs. The scraping stopped for a moment, replaced by an unnerving silence that felt heavier than any sound. Was it just your tired eyes? The stress? The house playing tricks? The lingering image of those alien eyes in your own reflection implants a seed of genuine terror. You find yourself avoiding reflective surfaces or bracing yourself before looking into them, anticipating what might be waiting just behind your own image. What does the silence know that you don't? The scraping persists, but it's changed again. It's slower now, more deliberate, and often punctuated by long pauses. When it stops, the silence is profound, expectant. You've noticed that the reflections in the mirrors seem clearer during these silences, less distorted, yet somehow more chilling. It's as if the stillness allows whatever is moving within the walls to consolidate its presence, to project itself more distinctly onto the world outside its hidden channels. You stand in the main hallway, staring at the large tarnished mirror that hangs opposite the stairs. The frame is ornate, heavy with dark, carved wood. The glass is cloudy, making your own reflection vague, like looking through dirty water. But you see it clearly now, moving slowly in the background of the reflection, inside the reflected house. It's not just a blur anymore. It's thin, impossibly thin, like a shadow peeled from the wall, and it moves with a fluid, jerky motion, closer to the surface of the glass. It mimics the scraping sound, a slow, dragging shift behind the blurry image of your own shoulders. A profound sense of dread washes over you, cold and absolute, shattering the last vestiges of rationalization. This is not a rodent, not the house settling. This is something else, something that exists in the spaces between the walls, in the places you cannot see, and it is using the sounds and the reflections to make itself known. You turn away from the mirror, the image burned into your mind, but the scraping continues, slow and patient, a sound that seems to follow you even when you move away. You feel a growing detachment, a numb terror that is almost serene. The house is no longer just old and damp. It is a skin stretched over something ancient and hungry. The air grows colder, thick with the smell of rot and damp earth. The scraping pauses, and then you hear it, faint but clear, echoing from somewhere deep within the wall, behind where the mirror hangs. It's not a scrape this time. It's a wet, guttural exhale, a sound of effort, followed by a soft, yielding crack. Something has given way. Is it trying to get out, or simply moving into a new, closer chamber? The mirrors seem to pulse with a faint internal light, and your own reflection feels less like you and more like a temporary placeholder. You try to leave. You walk to the door, hand outstretched, fingers brushing against the cold, tarnished metal of the doorknob. But the scraping is loud now, right behind the doorframe, a frantic, tearing sound that makes the wood tremble. You hear the wet hissing sound again, closer this time, like steam escaping or skin being peeled. You look down at the polished surface of the wooden floorboards, dark and reflective. Your reflection stares back, distorted by the grain and age of the wood, but the eyes are wide, vacant, and they are not looking at you, but past you, at something behind you. The scraping stops abruptly. The silence that follows is absolute, a vacuum that seems to suck the very air from your lungs. You feel an intense pressure build in your ears, a rising sense of disorientation. Your mind feels like glass, about to shatter. You see the mirrors again, shimmering in the dim light, all facing you, reflecting your terror back at you multiplied. Each reflection slightly different, slightly more wrong than the last. Your hands start to tremble. You look at your reflection in the dark wood of the door itself, seeing your own face contorted in a silent scream. But the scream isn't yours. It seems to come from the reflection itself. A sound trapped behind the surface. A laugh bubbles up in your throat, thin and hysterical. You pull your hand back from the doorknob. There's nowhere to go. The house has sealed itself around you, a damp, breathing shell. You sink to the floor, knees hitting the cold wood. The scraping starts again, a low, rhythmic pulse that resonates through the floorboards, through your very bones. It feels like it's inside you now, moving beneath your skin. You look down at your hands, seeing the faint, ghostly outline of something elongated and thin, moving just beneath the surface of your skin, in the dim reflection on the wood. It mimics the scraping motion. This is the uncanny event, seeing the internal movement reflected externally. The emotional fracture is complete. Fear has given way to a terrifying acceptance, a sense of being merged with the horror. The motif of reflections has become a window not just onto an external presence, but into your own dissolution. An ambiguous line forms in your mind. Are you seeing it or becoming it? The silence waits and the scraping answers, not with sound, but with a felt presence that presses in on you from all sides, pushing the air from your lungs. The house settles into a different kind of silence, one that feels less like an absence of sound and more like a held breath. The frantic scraping has stopped. Now there is only the distant, persistent drip, and the slow, almost gentle scrape, like something testing a surface, finding purchase. You remain on the floor, curled against the wall, numb and detached. The terror hasn't vanished, but it's changed, dulled by exhaustion and the sheer weight of the impossible. The mirrors are still there, dark eyes watching from the walls. You don't look at them directly anymore, but you see their edges in your periphery, the frames like dark, empty mouths. The reflection in the polished floor is still there, faint and disturbing. You trace the lines of the wood, feeling the cool, damp surface. The wet, hissing sound is closer now, sometimes seeming to come from just beyond your ear. A soft sigh in the dark. You get up slowly, your movements stiff and deliberate, like a marionette controlled by slack strings. You walk towards the bathroom, the source of the initial sounds. The air grows colder, thicker with the smell of rot. You stand before the wall where the scraping began. The plaster feels soft, yielding under your touch. It feels wet. You press your hand against it, and your fingers sink slightly into the porous surface. The wall breathes, a slow, almost imperceptible expansion and contraction against your palm. This is the subtle, final uncanny event. The house itself becoming something organic, something alive and containing. The moment of fracture here is a strange peace, a surrender to the inevitable. You feel a profound sense of quiet, a stillness that mirrors the river outside. The recurring motif of reflections seems to have faded, replaced by the tangible reality of the wall, the house. But you glimpse it one last time, reflected in the cloudy glass of the bathroom mirror. A faint, elongated shadow moving inside the wall behind you, just a few inches away, its shape indistinct but present. The final ambiguous line whispers through your mind. Perhaps it wasn't trapped within the walls, but merely waiting for you to join it there. The scraping continues, soft and rhythmic, a lullaby of damp earth and decay. You listen, no longer afraid, just present. The light outside has died completely now. The darkness in the house is absolute, broken only by the faintest slivers of moon that find their way through the grimy windows. The sounds have quieted again, receding back into the bones of the house. The frantic tearing is gone, replaced by the familiar, unsettling rhythm. Drip, scrape, hiss. It's a softer sound now, less demanding, more a part of the house's natural respiration. You sit in the dark, eyes wide open, seeing nothing but the inky blackness. The feeling of being watched, of something moving just beyond your sight, has not left. It has simply become part of the atmosphere, like the damp chill or the smell of decay. You don't think about leaving anymore. The idea feels foreign, impossible. The house holds you gently, like a hand cupped around a fragile thing. The terror has dissipated, leaving behind a hollow ache. a profound stillness in your chest. You feel disconnected from the person who walked in here, seeking quiet. That person seems distant, a character in a story you read a long time ago. The reflections are gone from your immediate awareness, but you feel them. Countless eyes staring from the dark surfaces, mirroring a stillness that matches your own. The ambiguous questions linger, unanswered, perhaps unanswerable. Was it the house? Was it something within the walls? Was it something in the water, drawn in by the pipes? Or was it always within you, waiting for the damp, quiet darkness to coax it out? The sounds are fading now, becoming softer, almost imperceptible. Just the slow drip, the gentle scrape, the softest hiss. They are settling in for the night, and so are you. The final, unsettling thought blooms in the quiet. The silence is not empty. It is full of waiting. And if you hear it again tonight, don't answer. Not yet. The sounds below the floorboards no longer whisper. They assert. What began as a faint scuttling now scrapes, a relentless abrasion of bone or stone against raw wood. There is a new sound too, heavy and slow, a dragging weight that groans against the joists, shifts painfully as if settling into damp earth. And accompanying this dreadful movement, closer than the floor, a wet, ragged sound like breath struggling through thick water. It is not the sharp gasp of fear, but the slow, viscous pull of something submerged, something trying to surface. You press your ear to the bare wood, the cold seeping into your cheek through the thin fabric of your shirt. The sound vibrates directly into your skull, bypassing the ear, a physical presence. A profound cold emanates from specific points, concentrated near the old floor drain in the corner of the study, pooling around the rusted grates. The air itself feels heavy, thick with the scent of deep decay, a cloying mildew overlaid with a faint metallic tang, like old pennies or dried blood. It coats the back of your throat, making you cough, a shallow, nervous sound that you instantly regret. Immediately, the scraping pauses. The heavy dragging ceases. Even the wet, ragged breathing holds its impossible note. The silence that rushes in is not emptiness, but a listening void. You hold your own breath, your heart hammering a frantic, clumsy beat against your ribs. You whisper a question into the floorboards, a single, strained word. Hello? Only the silence answers, deeper, colder than before. You move to the floor drain, a cast iron circle sunk into the concrete perimeter. Kneeling, you pry at the grate with trembling fingers. It resists, not with the stiffness of rust, but with a strange, yielding pressure from below, as if something soft yet firm is pressing against it, holding it in place. You try another drain, deeper in the room, closer to where the heavy sound originated. This grate lifts easily, revealing a dark, narrow pipe dropping into blackness. You shine the weak beam of your phone light down. Nothing but the slick, dark walls of the pipe. But as you watch, a single, unexplainable ripple disturbs the stagnant water at the bottom. A brief tremor that makes no sense in the still air. The light trembles in your hand. The feeling of being watched intensifies, focusing on the hidden spaces, the dark mouths of the drains, the inaccessible crawlspace vents that look like closed eyes under the house. The sleeplessness is a constant companion now, a jagged edge to your thoughts. Every creak of the house is amplified, interpreted. You stare at the drain grates, at the lines where floorboards meet, seeing them not just as architectural features, but as barriers, locked spaces, keeping something in, or perhaps keeping you out. The anxiety coils tighter in your chest, a physical knot. You find yourself questioning what you heard, what you felt. Was it just the old house settling? The wind in the pipes? The sounds are so distinct, so personal, yet a tiny voice, cold and rational, whispers of delusion, of a mind fraying under stress. But the feeling of the great resisting, the ripple in the dark water, the scent of decay that lingers even after you've left the room, these things defy simple explanation. There is something beneath the surface, something that is not meant to be disturbed, and it knows you are trying to look. Welcome to the Eerie Hour. Some places don't just haunt you, they wait. If you enjoy descending into the strange and the forgotten, don't forget to like and subscribe, and share your theories below. Now let's begin. But remember, once the story starts, something always follows. The house settles around you, a ship anchored in heavy air. Dust motes drift in the slivers of light that pierce the drawn blinds. There's a quiet here, but it feels thin, easily broken. It's the kind of quiet that listens. You'd noticed it first in the pipes, a soft gurgling that didn't quite match the ebb and flow of water usage. A house settling, you'd told yourself. Old pipes singing their rusty songs. But the sounds grew, less like water, more like something shifting, something trying to move within the walls. It's a low scraping, sometimes a brush against wood, as if dust bunnies the size of rats are dragging themselves through forgotten cavities. You listen, holding your breath, but when you move closer, the sound stops. Or perhaps it just moves with you, always just out of earshot, just around the corner. The old mirrors in the hallways seem too dark, their surfaces holding secrets rather than reflections. You see yourself there, a figure shrouded in the house's gloom, and for a second, you don't quite recognize the fear etched around your eyes. A single drop of condensation forms on the bathroom mirror, thick and opaque, sliding slowly like a tear, though the room is cool and dry. You wipe it away, but the cold spot lingers under your palm. The air itself feels thick, carrying a faint, almost imperceptible scent of damp earth and something else, something metallic and stagnant. You tell yourself it's just an old house airing out, finding its breath after years of silence. But the silence here isn't empty. It's full of waiting, full of the sounds that pause whenever you listen too hard. The sounds are no longer confined to the pipes. They seem to be coming from everywhere. The walls, the floorboards beneath your feet, even empty corners where shadows gather like spilled ink. The scraping has evolved into a distinct, dragging crawl, sometimes distant, a faint rustle in the plaster, sometimes terrifyingly close, as if something is pressing against the drywall, just inches from your ear. You freeze, heart hammering, but the sound shifts, echoing away into another part of the house, a cruel game of hide and seek. Then there are the breaths, shallow and ragged, exhaled into the very fabric of the structure. They vary in intensity too, a faint sigh carried on a non-existent draft, or a sudden, sharp intake of air that makes you whip around, expecting to see someone standing behind you. The supernatural activity escalates, mocking mundane explanations. Faucets turn on with a sudden, violent sputter, spraying cold water into the sink before cutting off abruptly. Water pressure fluctuates wildly, a showerhead spitting weakly one moment, then blasting with impossible force the next. rattling the pipes like bones in a drum. The mirrors are worse now. They fog over instantly, thick white veils appearing in the presence of these sounds or events. And in the fleeting moments before the mist clears, you catch glimpses of distorted reflections, faces that aren't yours, or yours twisted into grotesque, elongated forms, their eyes wide with silent screams or malevolent curiosity. The surfaces of the walls feel unnaturally cold and slightly yielding under your touch, like taut skin. And the persistent sound of dripping is everywhere, a constant, maddening rhythm, even when you can find no visible source of water. No leak, no condensation. You are being watched. The feeling is a physical weight on your shoulders, a prickling on your neck. The distorted reflections in the mirrors, the sounds of things moving within the walls and under the floorboards. It all speaks of movement that is trapped, confined, desperately seeking a way out of the house's own skin. Your mental state deteriorates into significant paranoia. You question the integrity of the house itself, wondering if the walls are thinner than they should be, if the foundations are shifting, or if it's your own perception that is warping, hallucinating sounds and sights that aren't there. You find an old, brittle piece of paper tucked into a crack in the baseboard near the kitchen. It's brittle and yellowed, covered in faded, shaky handwriting. Most of it is illegible, but a few fragmented lines leap out. Cannot escape the skin. Waits beneath the wood. Reflection shows the other side. It feels like a key, but you don't know what lock it fits, only that it chills you to the bone and deepens the terrible sense of being trapped with something equally confined, desperately yearning for release. The cryptic note burns in your pocket, its words echoing the terrible sounds you hear. Cannot escape the skin. The sounds behind the walls seem to respond to this discovery, growing louder, more frantic. The crawling is faster now, a frantic scratching, like desperate fingernails on plaster. The breathing is closer, heavier, sometimes a wet guttural sound that makes you gag. The feeling of being watched isn't just a sensation anymore. You catch movements in your peripheral vision, shadows detaching themselves from corners only to snap back when you turn your head. The atmospheric detail that haunts you most is the smell, a cloying, sweet decay that wafts through the house intermittently. Stronger in rooms where the sounds are loudest. It's not the smell of rot, but something else, something organic and stagnant, like pond scum left to bake in the sun. The water phenomena continue, more aggressive now. When you turn on a faucet, the water is sometimes thick and dark, like mud, for a few seconds before clearing, leaving behind a faint, greasy residue. The mirrors are your torment. You avoid them, covering them with cloths, but you feel their presence. Sense the distorted reflections waiting beneath the fabric. One mirror in the hallway, too heavy to move, refuses to stay covered. The sheet you draped over it lies crumpled on the floor each morning. In its surface, you see your own reflection, but twisted, elongated, its eyes black pits, and sometimes moving just behind it, indistinct shapes writhing like trapped things. The motif of distorted reflections and trapped movement is everywhere now. The sounds are of something wanting out. The reflections show a reality that is skewed, and perhaps a place where things are held against their will. Your psychological fracture deepens into a terrifying suspicion. The house isn't just haunted, it's alive, and you are living inside its skin, listening to the things trapped within its flesh and bone. The ambiguous line that loops through your mind, whispered by the scratching walls, is the house the cage or are you? The line, is the house the cage, or are you? Replays endlessly in your mind, a maddening loop. The sounds have found a rhythm now, a deliberate scraping and panting that follows your movements from room to room. It's no longer random. It feels purposeful, like something trailing you, learning your patterns. The smell of sweet decay is constant, a thick, suffocating blanket in the air, mingling with the scent of stagnant water. This overpowering atmospheric detail makes it hard to breathe, hard to think clearly. The mirrors are impossible to ignore. You find yourself drawn to them despite the terror, compelled to look into the distorted reflections as if they hold a terrible truth you need to confront. In the largest hallway mirror, the twisted version of yourself doesn't just writhe now. It reaches out, its elongated fingers pressed against the glass, leaving faint, greasy smears on the actual mirror surface. The boundary feels permeable, thin. The trapped movement is no longer just sounds in the walls. It feels like a pressure against the surfaces of the house, a bulging in the plaster you can see if you look closely enough. Your psychological state is fragile, teetering on the brink of collapse. You start talking to the sounds, pleading with them, demanding to know what they want. Sleep offers no escape. Dreams are filled with claustrophobic spaces, narrow pipes. Endless, dark hallways lined with mirrors showing impossible depths. You pick up the old note again, its faded lines seeming to pulse with faint light in the dimness. The part about the other side suddenly makes horrifying sense in conjunction with the reaching reflection. The uncanny event that seals your terror occurs in the bathroom. The drain in the sink gurgles violently, and a dark, viscous liquid slowly bubbles up. Not water, but the same greasy substance you saw earlier. As it recedes, pooling sluggishly at the bottom of the sink, you see, pressed against the metal drain cover, what looks undeniably like the tips of human fingers, pale and thin, slowly withdrawing back into the darkness below. An ambiguous thought whispers through your fear. Perhaps they don't want to get out? Perhaps they want something to come in. Perhaps they don't want to get out? Perhaps they want something to come in. The thought lodges in your mind, a horrifying counterpoint to the frantic scraping and breathing that now seems to pulse with a desperate energy. The sounds are centered now, focused on a single wall in the living room, a relentless pounding and tearing as if something is trying to break through. The air is thick with the smell of decay and stagnant water, a suffocating combination that coats your tongue and burns your nostrils. This overwhelming atmospheric detail is laced with a new sound, a low, wet tearing, like fabric being ripped apart, but deeper, more visceral. The mirrors are reflecting only darkness now, deep, absolute blackness that seems to absorb all light, even in well-lit rooms. The distorted reflections are gone, replaced by this terrifying void. You touch the surface of one mirror, expecting cool glass, but it feels warm and strangely yielding, like warm water or soft mud, drawing your fingers slightly inwards. The motif of the trapped movement is culminating. Whatever is in the walls is converging on this one spot. Your psychological fracture is complete. You are no longer questioning your sanity, but the nature of reality itself. The house is not just old, it is a container, a thin shell holding back something ancient and hungry. The uncanny event you have been dreading arrives with a sickening crunch of plaster and wood. A small section of the living room wall bulges outwards, cracks radiating from the center like a spiderweb. Dust sifts down, thick and gray. Then, slowly, deliberately, something pushes through the widening gap. It's not a hand, not immediately recognizable, but a pale, moist mass that ripples and shifts, covered in the same dark, greasy residue that came from the drain. It moves with a strange, pulsing rhythm, pushing further into the room, accompanied by the wet, tearing sound and a low, inhuman groan from within the wall. Your recurring motif, the mirrors, are no longer just reflecting. They seem to be watching this, their dark surfaces like blind eyes fixed on the horror unfolding. An ambiguous realization chills you to your core. The skin is broken. The skin is broken. The phrase hangs in the heavy, silent air. The pounding and tearing from the wall have stopped. The pale, shifting mass that emerged has receded back into the darkness of the ruptured plaster, leaving behind a gaping, ragged hole and a smear of dark residue that glistens wetly in the dim light. The suffocating smell of decay and stagnant water lingers, clinging to everything like a shroud. The atmospheric detail that remains is the silence. It is heavier, deeper than before, a profound, listening silence that feels like the absence of all sound, except for the faint, irregular sound of your own trembling breath. The mirrors are still dark, reflecting nothing but the void. But the warmth is gone from their surfaces. They are cold now, unnaturally cold. They are still watching, you know, their dark surfaces like eyes fixed on the aftermath. The motif of the confined spaces and what is trapped within seems to have reached a terrifying stasis. Something attempted escape or entry, and perhaps succeeded, or perhaps simply retreated, waiting. Your psychological residue is a profound, bone-deep exhaustion and a quiet, absolute certainty of what you experienced. There is no questioning left, only a chilling acceptance of a reality twisted just beyond comprehension. The unanswered questions hang in the air like the smell. What was in the wall? What did it want? Did it get what it came for? The ragged hole in the wall is a dark mouth in the house's side, a wound that refuses to heal. The dark mirrors reflect the empty room, and yet you feel their gaze. The silence is no longer empty. It is full of the memory of scraping, breathing, and a sound like tearing flesh. The lingering presence is not loud, but a subtle pressure on the air, a sense of something waiting just beyond the edge of sight, just behind the veil of what you call real. And if you hear it again tonight, don't answer. Not yet. The pressure begins behind the eyes, a dull throb that isn't quite a headache, but something heavier, lower. It pushes down, a weight settling into your skull, making the world feel too close, too bright, too present. Sound shifts, no longer just vibrations in the air entering the ear, but tremors traveling through bone, rattling the teeth. The low thrumming from the walls, the distant, wet sighs, they are no longer external noises. They are sensations felt inside. A deep, resonating hum in the sternum, a vibration behind the kneecaps. It's like standing too close to something immense and terrible, something that moves the very ground you stand on. The supernatural is not a rumor or a whisper anymore. It is a presence, cold and definite. The small ceramic bird on the mantelpiece, always facing the window, is found turned precisely towards the door, its gaze fixed on the empty hallway. A sudden draft, sharp and frigid, sweeps through the room, though all windows and doors are sealed, lifting the edges of paper like startled wings before vanishing as quickly as it came. The air doesn't just feel cold. It feels thick, heavy with an unnatural density that makes breathing a conscious effort. You feel smothered, a crushing weight on your chest even when standing upright. Sleep offers no escape. The nights are invaded by dreams, vast, black bodies of water, cold and suffocating. Always the feeling of being pulled down, held under by unseen hands. The pressure building in your lungs, in your ears, behind your eyes. You wake gasping, choking on air that feels like water, the sheets tangled around you like restrictive weeds. The constriction lingers, a phantom tightness in the throat, a memory of drowning. The line between waking dread and sleeping terror is dissolving, the edges blurring into a continuous, gray unease. Memory warps subtly. Did you lock the door last night? You are certain you did, but the memory feels hazy, overlaid with images of rushing water. Was that wet patch on the floor there before? You can't recall. Dissociation sets in, a frightening detachment where you watch yourself move, a character in a film you can't control. The confusion is a fog, thick and disorienting. The sound of your own breathing becomes amplified, ragged and loud in the suffocating quiet. You hear the slight catch in your throat, the wet intake, the strained exhale. And then you hear it again, from behind the wall, from the drain. A low, wet, guttural sound. The sickening similarity is unbearable. Your breath and its sound merging indistinguishable. Out of the corner of your eye, as you turn from the sink, you see it. Not a shadow, but a lack of shadow clinging to the edge of the mirror. A movement in the periphery, gone the instant you try to focus. Later, bending to look into the bathroom drain, drawn by the persistent sound, you see something dark, not just grime, but something briefly, unsettlingly defined within the black circle, before your vision swims, and it's gone. What if you weren't meant to see it at all? The pressure behind your eyes increases, threatening to burst. Something is not just here. It is inside everything now, even you. The air is no longer merely heavy. It's a physical weight pressing down, thick and viscous, like trying to breathe through silt. The sounds are not just around you anymore. They are in you, vibrating bone, echoing in the hollows of teeth, rattling behind the eyes. The crawling, the scratching, the wet, shallow breathing, it's everywhere at once. It isn't coming from the walls. It feels like the walls themselves are breathing, expanding and contracting in a monstrous, slow rhythm. The pipes groan, a sound of tortured metal and stressed joints, like the entire structure is screaming. The floor beneath your feet shudders, not from footsteps, but from some deep, internal tremor. Dust rains from the ceiling in thick curtains, catching in the gloom, tasting of old earth and something metallic, like blood or rust. Look at the surfaces. They are changing. The wallpaper isn't just peeling, it's curling inward, darkening at the edges, dissolving into a viscous, dark decay that spreads like a stain. Wood warps and splits with sickening snaps, fibers tearing as if aged centuries in mere moments. The breath motif culminates here, becoming the very air you struggle against. Each inhale is a fight, like drawing poison into your lungs, and the exhale is caught in the overwhelming alien breath that surrounds you. It feels like you are being breathed in, slowly consumed by an unseen gaseous maw. Your vision blurs, not from tears, but from the overwhelming pressure, the darkness coalescing at the edges. Sanity fractures. The mind, desperate for logic, finds none. The terror is pure, primal, It is the fear of dissolution, of being absorbed, of becoming a part of the crawling, breathing darkness. A horrifying clarity slices through the panic. This isn't a haunting. It is a presence, vast and ancient, and you are merely an imperfection, a tiny bubble of air. It is slowly collapsing, incorporating into its formless, decaying mass. Look down. Are those shadows on your hands? Or is your own skin darkening, cracking, beginning to replicate the decay spreading across the room? The crawling sensation isn't just external. It's under the skin now, a sickening movement beneath the surface. The breath fills your ears, deafening you to everything but the sound of your own frantic, failing heart, trying to push against the crushing weight. This isn't drowning in water. This is drowning in the dark. You are no longer standing in the room. You are dissolving into it. Is this death, or merely the beginning of a different kind of existence within the presence? It feels like being erased, every thought, every memory, every you being scrubbed away by the rhythmic, consuming breath. The world is narrowing to just the sound, the crushing air, and the sickening feeling of being inhaled. The sudden cessation of sound is not a relief. It is a vacuum. The air, thick with the echoes of impossible noise and unseen violence, now presses in with a silence that feels deliberate, heavy. You stand in the center of it, lungs still struggling to catch the breath that was stolen moments ago. Look around. The room bears the weight of what happened. Not just overturned furniture or scattered debris, but deeper wounds. Scratches score the floorboards, like ancient script, seemingly carved by something desperate. A viscous, dark residue, the color of dried wine, but smelling of something metallic and sweet, stains the walls in Rorschach patterns that seem to shift if you stare too long. The corners of the room pulse with a faint, barely perceptible wrongness, a visual hum you feel in your teeth. The environment is a broken mirror now, reflecting a reality that isn't quite stable. The air itself feels wrong. It's too still, too cold, carrying the ghost of a scent you can't quite place. Something like damp earth and forgotten fear. Look at the surfaces around you. The glass in the cabinet door, somehow unbroken, shows a reflection that is subtly distorted, elongated, as if the space within is stretched. Your own face in it seems paler, older, the eyes holding a terrifying calm you don't recognize. The recurring motif of the mirror, once a simple boundary, is now just another surface where the decay manifests, showing the permanent warp in the world's fabric. You reach out a hand towards your reflection, and it responds a beat too late, hesitant, as if unsure if it's tethered to you anymore. Where does the horror go when it leaves? Does it truly leave, or does it just change state? Condense into the silence, seep into the scarred wood and the chilling air. You are standing here. Your feet are on the floor. This feels real. But the quietness isn't just outside. It's inside too. The frantic thoughts, the terror that seized you, they are gone, replaced by this unnerving stillness. Have you escaped? Or is this quiet space within you just another room it has claimed? A final prison built from the absence of panic. The sense of presence hasn't vanished. It's simply become diffuse, a weight on your shoulders, a whisper that isn't sound but thought, suggesting that the cycle hasn't broken, merely paused. This stillness is not an end, but a transformation, hinting that some horrors don't just consume places, They consume the idea of a place and the mind that holds it. What remains is just the echo, trapped in the warped reflection, in the air that refuses to move. It leaves you with a certainty that is worse than any fear. It isn't over. It is merely waiting. And if you hear it again tonight, don't answer. Not yet.